but also how it might be affecting other intersections, right? So that kind of goes to show, Darrell, I think that we have a slide that kind of goes into a little bit of this. So Darrell, if you can bring up the presentation one more time, I'll stop my screen and then maybe I can kind of segue into that to show kind of what it is that I wanted to show off in terms of what we're doing and how we're capturing that these community prioritizations. Okay, so if we can go here, you guys can see that this is what these are what programs that we're promoting to capture this information, right? So with the data collected, it shows that these are kind of this is the sample size of what we have as the programs that Best Start is putting out, and kind of shows what it is that we're receiving individual participation on. And it just seems to be that we're gradually growing in a way that we're headed towards promoting more and more programs that still are able to capture this community cohesion. Sylvia, I don't know if you wanted to kind of attack onto that one, but I think these are some new this is kind of the who, right? So we've already kind of captured the what and the whens, and this is the who, right? So on that note of intersectionality, we're capturing not only members who are interested in just education or in early childhood development, but we're capturing advocates from all different sides of the Antelope Valley with our programs, and all of our educational initiatives as well. So as you can see, it's family support, it's governmental offices supporting us, it's medical groups, mental health groups, and mental health programs. So all these things seem to intersect where we want our prenatal to 5 population to grow and how we can continue to advocate them in kind of a holistic way, right? And as we can see that it's shown here in the infograph in our data.
That's right, David. And this is, again, any of this information we can make public for you. But again, David stated it exactly as it is, like different domains, and really it just blows my mind the kind of work that is being done here in the Antelope Valley. So again, a huge round of applause for the work that you as an AV community has done. So really be really proud of that work. Next slide. So one of the things that we also wanted to do, many of you have been following and were part of the State of the Child report that we did here for the Antelope Valley. It was a year-long process with California report, and but we wanted to. There had never been a State of the Child report done here in the Antelope Valley, and we felt that it was really important to have some of this data developed and produced into a massive report that we could utilize for many reasons. And like I said, many of our stakeholders that were here, that are maybe of you that are here, were part either of the interviews or part of the decision-making process into what areas we wanted to look into. Darrell, you have to stop sharing. There you go. And but it was a really phenomenal report. But I wanted to just do a real quick highlight as to some of the purpose and some of the things that we found and what we want to do with that. Okay, next slide. So we partnered up with Children's Bureau, Best Start, and Catalyst California. We partnered up with them to begin this process over a year ago, about a year and 3 months ago, to really begin this. And there were several reasons that we wanted to do it, that we wanted to do this report. But one of the main reasons was really to understand the state of children and public systems in the Antelope Valley. And what that meant really was what kind of resources, what kind of services, what kind of of, of again, resources were available to parents, to children, to residents here in the Antelope Valley. We wanted to make sure that we wanted to provide a tool that would really just kind of elevate the issues, what problems we were having here in the Antelope Valley, so that we could take that information and we could take it to our representatives. We could take it to you know, the people in charge of the administrators and the higher people that are both in DMH, DCFS. We wanted to make sure that other organizations knew of what was happening. Funders, right, to bring in more funding to the Antelope Valley. We wanted to do that. We also wanted to really have more data and more information to help strengthen advocacy. Again, funding. What kind of efforts and what kind of projects do we as a community here with Best Start want to take on to improve some of these findings that and some of these outcomes that were found from this report. We also wanted to make sure that we presented the most comprehensive analysis of data from the region to date. We have a lot of data that is a couple of years old, but we wanted to make sure that the state of the child report kind of just took all of the data and encompassed it together. So we did that. And then we, again, we wanted to talk to other agencies and other partners to be able to use this data for the work that they're doing, for the information that we're sharing throughout our county. So this is one of the things really, we wanted our county to know the work we're doing and what we're doing.
Carrillo's on there.
So I know that yeah, Mr. Carrillo has arrived. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, which is a good thing that it was just the beginning of this. And we'll come back to this because I want to give him the time to be able to do his presentation. Mr. Carrillo, thank you so much for being here. Good morning. Welcome. And I'm going to just do a brief introduction to Mr. Juan Carrillo. Mr. Juan Carrillo is assembly member who was elected to the California State Assembly in November of 2022 to represent the 39th Assembly District. He will represent portions of the northern Antelope Valley, including Palmdale, Lancaster, the eastern communities of Little Rock, Lake LA, and Sun Village, stretching into San Bernardino County to include Adelanto, Esperia, Mountain View Acres, and Victorville. Assemblyman Carrillo served as a member of the Palmdale City Council, advocating for affordable housing to address the homelessness crisis, increasing green space, and supporting local small businesses as they recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Before entering public office, Mr. Carrillo served as a city planner for 15 years, 10 of which were in the city of Palmdale. Mr. Juan Carrillo was born and raised in Guadalajara. Woohoo, that's where I am right now. And emigrated to LA when he was 15. He earned his associate degree in architecture, urban and regional planning from Cal State Polytechnic University in Pomona, and has a master's degree in public administration from Cal State Northridge. Mr. Carrillo lives with his wife in East Palmdale with their 4 children. And again, please help me welcome Mr. Juan Carrillo here. We're really glad to have you here, and welcome, bienvenidos.
Muchas gracias, buenos dias, and thank you for having me. I wish I was in Guadalajara too. Haven't been able to spend some time over there. I did go back to Guadalajara in July, but that's just on a personal note. I really enjoy going back to where I was born. Well, again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time, and really happy to be able to give you an update on what our legislative package looks like related to what your interests are. And I'll just start by saying that the legislature just wrapped up the first year of a 2-year cycle on September 14. So now I'm on the district doing all the work that needs to be done in the district. And I am proud to say that I sent 9 bills to the governor's desk. Really excited and looking forward to have those 9 bills being signed by the governor. we are confident that he will. These bills address supporting immigrant seniors, protecting our foster youth, providing equity mechanisms for CalFresh recipients, streamlining broadband access, and establishing best practices for the use of data in transportation planning. The governor has until October 14 to sign or reject the bills. And I'm really, a bill that I was really happy and worked hard on was an education bill, AB 555. It was included in the budget, which would remove barriers to serving 3-year-olds by prioritizing 3-year-olds as the same priority as 4-year-olds when they enter pre-K. As you know, research has indicated that in October 2021, California only served 8.5% of over 300,000 eligible 3-year-olds in the California State Preschool Program. This will remove the needle for those children to get the 2 full year of pre-K before hitting grade schools. I would also like to share my foster youth bill, AB 448, which is currently waiting for the governor's signature. This bill would ensure that social workers or probation officers communicate if and when they have identified a family member to the court so that these kids can be placed with family members. As you know, oftentimes the lack of communication result in child missing out of potential connecting with their family and staying connected. I am also very excited to also announce that as part of the state budget, I was able to secure $260,000 for a pocket park on 47th Street East and Avenue R4. This park would provide shade structures, some park furniture, and exercise equipment. I'm a firm believer that open spaces improve the quality of life for residents, and that's something that I'm also really excited to be able to bring to the district. These are just simple snippets of our year so far, and happy to share any other details on other bills I authored in with more detail. Or you can reach out to Brenda from my staff if you need more information and more specifics on any of the bills that we were able to get on the governor's desk. Really happy to be here again, and thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for improving the quality of life of residents throughout the state, specifically what you do in Assembly District 39. With that, I thank you, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them now. If not, feel free to reach out to Brenda in my office in Sacramento, or the office here in Palmdale. We do have an office in Palmdale by City Hall, and we have another office in the city of Adelanto at City Hall in Adelanto too. With that, again, thank you. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Or please feel free to reach out to our offices. Thank you again.
If anyone has any questions, either come off mute and then, or you could put it in the chat. And we're also really excited because Mr. Juan Carrillo will be attending our Children's Bureau grand opening that's happening October 21st. So we'll be seeing you there again for sure, and we're really excited about that. The new work that's going to be happening there. Doretta, go ahead. I know you raised your hand.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Carrillo. I just have a quick question to see if maybe you can guide me in the right direction. I just found out from a couple of parents that according to the California Nutrition, students are having their juice replaced with either an apple or orange or a banana, and they're receiving milk as opposed to that. Many children, particularly within the African American community, have allergies to milk. Most of them couldn't even drink milk as babies. They drank ice milk and soy milk. I was wondering, was there any advice or suggestions that you can give in terms of how to actually have the community address that issue so that we can look into getting juice back on the dietary menu for the children and TK through, I'm going to say 8th grade that I'm aware of it now. And thank you so much for your time and attention.
Well, thanks for bringing that up to my attention. I was not aware of that. Nutrition for our students is something that I care about. As you know, I was a board member with the Palmdale School District, and those are issues that are of importance to me. I don't have the answer for you right now, but let's keep on the communication open. I'll have Brenda from my office reach out to you and see how we can be of assistance to that. But thank you for bringing that up to my attention. We'll make sure that we address it. Thank you, board member.
Thank
And
you
we
so
also
much,
have
sir.
another
I
question.
appreciate that.
I'm not
Okay.
sure who's on the phone, but it says iPhone. Go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning. I'm Ms. Crayon, the Executive Director and Program Developer for Green Thumb AV Youth Program and Wraparound Services. I wanted to ask a question in regards to housing, development, and infrastructure, as well as transportation. My question would be if there is a consideration to utilize the area between the border of Kern County, Avenue A up to Avenue G to develop housing without any barriers, as well as running transportation between the county lines, for our homeless and low income, to develop housing that is not only low income, but which could provide what we call wraparound services in that housing. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, there not only that effort in that specific area, but many areas throughout the state. That area that you describe is within our jurisdiction, ID 39. And I can tell you that I'm really excited that I'm the chair for local government. Being a city planner myself with about 20 years of experience, housing and public transit, public transportation are things that I'm passionate about and things that I've already been successful in getting resources to the district. But again, with my new role as the chair of local government, I will be working hard on getting actual housing units built, not only on paper. In the past, the legislature has been great at doing legislation to build more housing, but only on paper. What I mean by that is that there are bills that allow for accessory dwelling units, multifamily expedited process through local jurisdictions. And as a city planner, I actually experienced a lot of that, processing a lot of those entitlements. But unfortunately, they don't get built, and they don't get built because there's no funding mechanisms that would have developers be interested in building multifamily housing in several forms, whether it be in apartments, condominiums, townhomes. But that's something that I'm going to be working on this coming year, bringing some sort of redevelopment specifically to incentivize multifamily developers so that we are able to actually build the housing units that we need and not just have it on paper, because developers are not getting the money, the money actually builds the units. But you're going back to your questions, yes, that's an area that we're looking at, not only for the housing or the transportation, but the wraparound services. Student housing is another one that I'm going to be working on. Housing for community colleges. A lot of times we don't remember that being homeless stretches throughout the different students being one of those. And I've been in conversations with the president of the Antelope Valley College and the president of the Victor Valley College to make sure that we have funds that are going to be building student housing for those that are in community college. As we know, those for four-year universities have housing opportunities, but we don't have that in community colleges, and that's something that I'll be working on as well. Appreciate the question. Thank you.
Mr. Carrillo, there's another question from Doretta as well in the chat, and it says, are there any initiatives for families with disabled adults to receive support for ADUs on existing
Yes.
property?
Yes, there is $50 million that became available specifically to assist those homeowners that want to build an ADU. Those are going to be worked out through as far as what the application is going to look like. But those $50 million will be available for those homeowners that want to build an ADU. And I am a big believer in ADUs. I do have an ADU in my house. My daughter lived there for 3 years, and she just moved out this December on her own. As you know, our parents are aging, and having them close to us with their privacy is important to me as well. But to answer your question, yes, there's going to be funds available for ADUs and other specific funding for building more housing. even doing the SB9. Again, that's language that we're not used to in this type of meetings. That SB9 would allow single-family homeowners to subdivide their property into two, so that they could actually build more housing. But yeah, if there's anything more specific that you need to know, please let us know. We'll be able to answer those questions. And I hope that this answers your question, Loretta.
Thank you, Juan. Yes, you did. Thank you. I'll just wait for that information to come out and then I'll apply. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doretta. Anyone else with any questions or any comments that they'd like to offer to Mr. Carrillo? If not, then I'd like to definitely thank Mr. Carrillo. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you're doing for our community. And we continue to look towards the bills that are happening. What is going to be happening, through the government, through the governor, and we always offer our invitation to come back anytime through Best Start with our meetings and really join the work that we're doing. But we appreciate you coming today and spending this morning with us.
No, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And if there's any legislation that you want to propose, let me know. This is the time to start thinking about new bills for next year, and let us know how we can be helpful. Let us know if any bill ideas that you have. We'll be happy to work with you to make sure that we continue to improve the quality of life of our residents. And thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
So I know that we have some of Assemblyman Carrillo's staff here, and just want to say thank you for attending and being here with us. And part of the work that we do here with Best Start is really a lot of advocacy and looking at policy and looking at obviously bringing health and awareness to the Antelope Valley, and part of the work that Best Start can do as we continue to move in prioritizing what our community change agendas are going to be. Any type of policy or bills or things that are going to be laws that are going to be put into place. If we can support them by bringing more advocacy to them or more acknowledgement and just highlighting and informing the community, we definitely will would love to work with you on those kind of projects. Just making calls, sending letters, things like that. That's the ground, grassroots type of work that Best Start is best known for as well. So we just want to make sure that you all know that these are the kind of things that we can support and we can offer as a community to our representatives. Doretta.
Yes, I know that Mr. Carrillo, he just mentioned something about now is the time to submit any new legislations that we might feel need to be considered. Do you think maybe perhaps down the road in the near future, this group might possibly entertain that, looking at what types of legislations need to be developed and maybe submit it to him since we have his attention?
Doretta doesn't know yet, but she'll be guiding some of that work with us in terms of with her skills and her knowledge and experience. And then we're gonna pull a lot of you as well. But I think that there's a lot of work that that we're gonna be able to do and we're gonna be able to collaborate with. And especially once we define our community change agendas, we already know the areas. We know that one area is education and one area is children, youth, and families. So, once we prioritize that, we're going to be able to then maybe, through our policy committee, through our policy work and advocacy, we're going to be able to then offer some initiatives or some ideas that maybe that could turn into bills or other things that are going to bring about some more change to the community. And I know that there was, I'll get to you, Brenda, just one second. I just wanted to say that, or Denise, you asked if we can get information. We are going to get information. We're going to make a list. We're going to get all the information in terms of summarizing the bills and what what they do and where they're at. We're going to get that and share that with all of you that are here in attendance today. And Brenda, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you so much. Just wanted to make sure that that you guys all know I'm Assemblyman Juan Carrillo's legislative director. Thank you guys for all the work that you guys do. I'm very familiar with Best Start and all the work that you guys do in different regions. I used to be with Assemblymember Mike Gibson, worked on education with him, and just all the child development and just the space overall, and really proud of all the work that you guys have done thus far. And please let me know how I can be a resource to you. I will leave my email down below. We are ramping up to start our new legislative package for 2024. So welcome any new ideas and any information that you guys have. So I'm here if you have any questions or want to jot down my email.
Thank you, Brenda. We appreciate it. We will also, any of the information that was shared this through this meeting, we will make sure that all the attendees make sure that they get any contact information, any of the data reports, all of that we will be sharing with you all within the next coming week. And then I guess what we can do now is we can go ahead and go back to the State of the Child summary. Go back one more, Steph, please. No, back. Yeah. Okay, so we finished on the purpose. Go ahead and then, like I said, really, the goal really was about us getting the proper data from different domains, different issues that are happening here in the Antelope Valley, and taking that data and sharing it with the community, sharing it with our partners, and really so that we all could utilize this for funding purposes, for reporting purposes, for just information that we want to get out to all of the Antelope Valley. So we will continue to do that as well. Next slide, Stephanie, please. We wanted to talk a little bit about the methodology that was used, to create this report. Next slide. So one of the things was that in partnership with Children's Bureau and Catalyst California, we asked residents and advocates for recommendations on what issues to consider for this report. We wanted to see positive examples of programs or services that really uplift and which also then add to the data to include in the report. We wanted to make sure that we engage the stakeholders from our Best Start network, our residents, our stakeholders, and we did several meetings where we were going to be. We did several meetings where we gathered the information. We narrowed it down to what areas we wanted to look at, and then we held several sense-making sessions, and we invited over 100 residents in the Antelope Valley and advocates to really give us a better understanding of what the Antelope Valley is like, what really the state of the child is at this point. And then we used the participatory approach and collected input on how to gather, on what to measure for this report. We used different mixed methods. We analyzed publicly available regional data. We interviewed local partners. We also analyzed 30 data-driven indicators, including demographics, economics, education, resources, housing, equity, and health. Those were the main areas that we were focusing on. Next slide, please. We also shared that the initial findings and conducted sense-making back in 2022, but then in early 2023, we had those one-on-one interviews with about 12 focus group participants, and those interviews excuse me, those interviews allowed us to tell a broader story about what was happening here in our region and to dig deeper into these topics and address the data gaps with a qualitative perspective. We also wanted to make sure that, excuse me, that our partners and residents made the final decisions on the analysis and reporting of the work. So how will this report be used? Several ways. The data will be used to help inform community change agenda discussions. Excuse me, oh my God. It will also inform the learning and the evaluation work of the regional partnership by tracking short-term and midterm outcomes. We will take this data as well, and we will compare it within a year or 2 years down the line. We will do another State of the Child report and compare to make sure that we have taken on some of the recommendations. We have worked on some of these areas. We've improved some of these areas where the statistics were not necessarily, that were pretty sobering statistics, and then do a comparison and see where the state of the child is at that point in the Antelope Valley. We will also, we want to share and to help tell the story of the regional partnership here. And we want to identify the strengths we have, the needs we have, the gaps in the community. We also want to inform funders and local and county agencies of the information of the needs that we have here so that we can start opening ears and opening minds in terms of where to start sending some of these resources, some of these fundings here into the Antelope Valley. So that's part of what we want to do in terms of how we're going to use the report. Next slide, please, Steph. I wanted to talk real quick, briefly, about some of the findings that they had. There were 5 findings that there were. The first one is that the Antelope Valley is populous and diverse with many children, including those who need extra support. The second one was really about households, and especially those households with children and how they struggle to meet ends, to meet the average cost of living. Many of our households are living below those means. We also wanted to make sure that, the third finding was that the resource access is not keeping up with the needs of the diverse and growing Antelope Valley residents. The fourth finding was that the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline results from the lack of diversity, scarcity, and inequity that is currently happening here in the Antelope Valley. And the fifth finding was that equitable treatment of Antelope Valley residents is definitely a concern. So I'm just going to go down each one of them real quick and just kind of give a brief statistics on some of the findings that we had. If you can go to the next slide, please, Stephanie.
Sorry, hold on, I think it froze.
No worries. So the first finding goes back to in terms of demographics, and when, yeah, there we go. And next slide, please. We found in terms of demographics, we found that over 120,525 children under the age of 18, and that 29,666 children under the age of 5 are currently living in the Antelope Valley, and that roughly 1/3 of the Antelope Valley residents speak Spanish at home, and 3.8 speak Asian, Pacific Islander, and Indo-European language. Next slide. We found that the majority of children in the Antelope Valley, 57%, are Latinx community, and that that the 20.8% are white, and 13% of children here in the Antelope Valley are African American. And next slide, please. In terms of demographics, we also found that that over 2,000 children are in foster care, that nearly 2,000 students in the Antelope Valley, in all of the Antelope Valley school districts, are unhoused. and that we found that of all these children in the different districts in the Antelope Valley, 13,013 children have disabilities. And in seeing those numbers, we're seeing the type of need that we need, or the type of need that is happening here, and the lack of resources that are happening. Again, all this information is in our State of the Child report. And at the we will also share the link to get the report. We'll share the link in the chat, but we'll also share it when we send you all this information. And we have this report both in English and in Spanish. If you can go to the next slide, please, Stephanie. Next. So this is the same graph, but it's just in Spanish. So if you can click on those, Stephanie. Second finding is about housing. Households, especially those with children, struggle to cover the cost of living and high cost living. So here we see some of the stats that we found, and these are older stats, but we, especially because during the pandemic, the numbers obviously in terms of evictions had to slow down because of all the mandates that were happening in terms of no evictions that needed to be happening. So we're looking to see, as we move on, we're also looking to see what the actual numbers are going to be from 2019 to present that are going to be drastically different in comparison to these numbers. These are just numbers to compare to and where we're going to go. So, you know, back in between 2013 and 2017, there were 636 evictions. Currently, in the Antelope Valley, in the cities of Lancaster and Palmville, there is nearly 1,000 unhoused people in the cities. I believe that the numbers are a lot higher. I believe that the numbers are higher because of many people that are out in the desert, that many of the unhoused population that hasn't necessarily been counted by LASA or when they do the homeless counts of LA County. I believe that the number is actually a lot higher than we perceive. And especially for people that are maybe couch surfing, or maybe that are, you know, that haven't reported their housing issues, that also counts to the numbers being a lot higher. If you go to the next slide, we saw that 4 and 5 families with children under the age of six earn less than the real cost of living. We also saw that nearly 3 in 5 Antelope Valley renters are rent burdened. And what that means is that more than 30% of their income goes towards rent. And as you can see here in this, is that considering the Antelope Valley, and to think that the West Antelope Valley has the highest number of rent burden in the Antelope Valley, means that there's a lot of people that are renting out in West Antelope Valley. But the reality is that they are using anywhere between more than 30 to 50% of their income towards rent, which means that then it leaves them at a very, you know, minimal amount of money to be able to cover the cost of living in general, from food, from transportation, from utilities, all the costs that are needed to have formal, you know, to be living at the normal cost of living. Next slide. Finding number 3 is about resources and access to those resources, and how they're not keeping up with the growing and the diverse population here in the Antelope Valley. So nearly 1,500 live births in the Antelope Valley that lacked parental care in the first trimester. And that's 28% of all the births here in the Antelope Valley. And this is talking about the health domain. 60.4% of the Antelope Valley children have difficulty accessing medical care based on parent and guardian reports. This is the highest level in all of LA County. And the entire Antelope Valley is a health professional shortage area for mental health professionals. Steph, if you can go to the next slide. Here you can see how we have the highest health professional shortage, and it's seen regularly. It's seen at the DMH level. It's seen at other providers that provide services, mental health services for families and children. It's seen in the educational system where there isn't enough therapists to provide services or direct services within our school system. So this really is what then really increases the amount of the need here in the Antelope Valley, that we have providers, we have agencies that want to do the provision, but we lack the number of actual mental health therapists that can do the services. Next slide. So in terms of early childhood education, not one Antelope Valley zip code has sufficient access to childcare. So we, as the Antelope Valley, are known as a childcare desert, that there isn't enough provision of early childcare anywhere in the Antelope Valley. And what we've learned is that over 64% of preschoolers eligible for subsidized childcare were not enrolled in publicly subsidized early learning and care programs. We also found that 40.9% of the Antelope Valley's parents and caregivers report difficulty finding childcare. And we have the highest numbers in that area in all of LA County. Next slide. Finding number 4, in terms of the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline. Next slide. The scarcity and the inequity. One of the huge statistics that stood out, or outcomes that stood out, is that Antelope Valley schools suspend students at a higher rate than in LA County. 4% of students are being suspended at any given day through any of the schools in the school district here, districts here in the Antelope Valley, in comparison to LA County, where they're only at 1.7% in the county, and then in the state at 3.2%. So the number of suspension rates is astronomical compared to other places. Next slide. We also know that we only have that the highest numbers really are for foster kids, foster students, Black students, and students with disabilities who may need the most support are most likely to be suspended from school. So it's just become a quick knee-jerk reaction to suspend the children, as opposed to provide them with the resources and support that is needed to keep them from getting suspended. Next slide. Yeah, here we go. We also found that we only have a 67% of our children here in the Antelope Valley that graduate from high school, in comparison to the county where it's 86.1%. So again, our numbers are a lot lower than the rest of the county. And as you can see here, this shows where the graduation rates fall into. And in terms of the lowest rates, obviously here we see that is children and families experiencing homelessness. Next slide. This is the same slide. It's just in, go back to it, Stephanie, just so that anybody that speaks Spanish can see it a little bit, just to give them, again, shows the lowest number of categories in terms of graduation rates here in the Antelope Valley, with the overall graduation rate being 67.2%. Next slide. So what were some of the recommendations that came out of this report? Obviously addressing basic needs. We know that we have such a lack and a need for a lot of food, for housing, for just addressing a lot of our basic needs that we have: emotional support, mental health support, health support. We want to make sure that the work that we start doing with Best Start, and just in general as a community, is that we've got to start holding systems accountable. And so when we talk in Best Start about what is the impact that we want to make with systems, what we're saying is that what projects, what community projects, what work do we want to do that's going to disrupt some of these systems so that these numbers don't stay in place, so that these problems don't stay in place. That's the kind of work that we have to look at. We have to look systemically at how we can interrupt these and disrupt these systems. We want to increase the state's child care subsidy reimbursement rates for early education, educators and child care providers. We want to increase investments in health and mental health services. And we definitely want to increase investments in learning resources for children and families. And then we also want to make sure that we remember that, we here at Best Start, we just currently identify the two areas, the two domains that we are going to be using to prioritize our community change agenda. And again, one is education and the other one is children, youth, and families, and how they intersect with a lot of the need and a lot of the gaps that are happening here. And so these are going to be our top two community change priorities. In the next few months, we will be utilizing the data, including data that we got from this report, to really then narrow down to finalize the work and what our actual community change agendas are going to be. Next slide. Any questions or answers that we may have? I know, like I said, this is just a brief summary, and we will share the complete report. It's a 38-page report that is both in English and in Spanish. And I want to read the comment that Doretta put in the chat, because I think that really affects, especially when we're talking about suspension rates. Doretta states that the zero tolerance rule contributes to high suspension rates, whereas victims who eventually defend themselves may risk suspension as well as predators. Interventions must be actively engaged to resolve before situations escalate. Doretta, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. I think that the zero tolerance rule was necessary to curtail some of the incidents that we were seeing. And in being vigilant, we went ahead and implemented that. It's a good rule, however, it needs to be reviewed and utilized properly, because what we're doing is a disservice to youth that have actually possibly complained about instances of being bullied or harassment, and there's no recourse for them just to talk about it. And what ends up happening is the kids end up defending themselves. And in most cases, you now have two children that are at risk for suspension, when we could have had a situation that could have been resolved if we sat with the children, gave them some conflict resolution skills, at least find out what is the issue about, okay, and then work out some details. But right now, we're compromising victims as well as perpetrators by giving them the zero tolerance rule when they actually begin to defend themselves. So again, I want to encourage, not that we attack districts, because most of the time districts are not even aware of these little nuances, but to engage and communicate with them to make them aware, and then use that process to go back and be vigilant. I'd love to continue to talk more about the issues, because it is really important, and especially identifying which schools and districts actually have the highest propensity for this type of behavior. So just improving upon our equitable actions towards things that do take place in this school.
Thank you,
Oh,
Doretta.
one more thing.
And I know,
Can I add?
yeah, go ahead.
Can I add one more thing? Okay, I want to encourage the community of this too. Okay, everyone has a right to go to the school district meetings and express their concerns. You do not have to have children in the district. I would encourage that you actually live somewhere within that district. That is helpful, because you're speaking about the school in your area. But anytime you go and speak to the board, just understand that the board will listen. They will not necessarily respond to you right there, because Robert's Rules of Order prohibits board members from responding. So don't take it personal if they don't respond. But what you need to do is, at the end of your statement, ask for a written response. That way the superintendent has to respond to your query. This assists us with creating that paper trail, that we are working collaboratively with them, and then we have things that we can follow back. So just wanted to add that little piece.
Thank you, Doretta. Yeah, that's amazing information, and you're right. Part of it has to be, getting the information in terms of what you can do as a parent, what you can do as a community member, where you can go, and the rights that we have. And I think that's information that has to be shared with our community, because I think a lot of parents, a lot of people don't realize that there is opportunities for them to share their voice and their opinions and their insight into and their experiences, right? To what's happening within the school systems. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, iPhone.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Also,
There you go.
hi. Also, in kind of piggybacking off of the community collaboration and some of the things that we need to address with the school district, there's funding under the local control grant funding for these at-risk populations, in which there's a report card that is mandated from the school. I believe I would have to look a little bit more into it, but it's called the Local Control and Accountability Plan and Annual Update. We were placed on a report card by the school district to accomplish certain things. There's also funding under that local control grant in which they allocated for services outside of the school district to be rendered to the populations in which you're addressing. So I would like to actually visit the updated report card in which the school district has provided as an update, as well as the available funding to assist our mission in providing services in which the school district does not provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Doretta.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on that and make sure I put this clarifier on there. When it comes to the school accountability plan, there are actually meetings that are held at each school. First, you got to identify which school district plan you want to look at, because there's several. So that has to be a priority, identifying which one you want to look at, not to compromise the integrity of all of them. Also, when they do the school accountability plan, when they start creating that, they're done in open forums with community members. That way, community has the right to sit at the table and identify where the funds are going to be distributed, how they're going to be spent, and how they're going to be used. That's why it's important for community members to stay actively involved in these specialized meetings surrounding that. Some of the funds may be allocated towards what we think based on a general consensus. However, when you break it down to the needs of each particular school without any community involvement, they may have allocated those funds to use based on what they identify as necessary. That's why it's important for our community to stay involved. And I wanted to put that little fire in there. And you also want to keep up with your academic report cards, which go along with that as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or any other comments that they would like to make? Or if you feel more comfortable, you can also put it into the chat. And if not, Jarrell, you can go ahead and start sharing your presentation again. And again, we will be sharing. Stephanie, if you get an opportunity, could you please also put the link to the State of the Child report in the chat?
Okay, well, we have our next presentation concerning our evaluation frameworks with Alejandro Portillo, David De La Cruz, and Stephanie Reyes. I'm sorry, not Talia, but Stephanie Reyes. So we are going to turn this over to you, Alejandra, and David and Stephanie.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll share my screen right now so that you guys can check out our presentation. Thank you guys so much for being here right now. I wanted to kind of also give you guys a chance as I bring this up to kind of give yourselves a micro break. I know that, you know, sometimes when we're in these meetings, there's a lot of information and a lot of thinking that we have to do. So, I just, you know, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, think of
Yeah.
something, someone, some place that you really appreciate. And then while you're doing that, you know, take a deep breath, like 6 seconds in through your nose and out through your mouth. So I'll pull that up while you guys are kind of taking that break.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so here is our presentation. All right, so can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So give you guys just a couple more seconds, but I'm going to introduce ourselves. You guys, I've already kind of spoken. You guys have kind of met me already. I'm our place-based systems manager. But I'd also like to introduce the other my colleagues in the data and evaluation team. Going with Stephanie, who is our program specialist, and Alejandra Portillo, who is our consultant, providing us amazing feedback and developing and helping us with developing this evaluation plan from Lighthouse Evaluation and Consulting. So guys, if you wanted to say hi.
Everyone.
Mhm. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so just a quick agenda for everybody. You know, you guys are kind of meeting us right now, but we're gonna be asking a couple of questions and sharing some information about our evaluation framework. So we're gonna talk about why we're engaging in evaluation. We're gonna talk about the framework ourselves, what's guiding our work in creating this evaluation plan, the timeline, and we're also gonna share some reflections as well as some next steps. So with that, I'll take it over to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, David, for the introduction. Today in this presentation, like David said, we really want to reflect on the importance of evaluation and also why should we be engaging in evaluation. So we really want to go to the next slide. And as you see here, why engage in evaluation? The first thing is it will identify clear outcomes of what we're trying to accomplish in the Best Start partnership. It will also measure our progress over time to see if we're reaching our outcome goals. I also like to think about it as like an accountability process to be accountable to see if we're really doing what we're saying we're going to do. It will also, again, track our success and identify areas of growth in our partnership. We'll also be able to identify if we're not growing. So I also want to emphasize that it will show us, but it will also show us if we're not. And like I said, again, it's I like to think about it as like an accountability to be accountable for the actions we're saying we're going to do. The next slide. I think
right.
it's yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. So trying to give you guys a little bit of context with this is that Best Start is really honing in on our place in the community, right? So we want to see positive impact and we want to see positive outcomes here in the Antelope Valley. But for us to do that, it requires kind of some introspective. And that comes from what our goal here is, right? So the real goal that Best Start is trying to pursue is systems change. So systems change happens when you know you it's kind of a self-explanatory name, right? But meanwhile the concept might be something easy to grasp from the name, but there's a lot that goes into it. So it's what happens when we see systems change. It's when we see the goals of a system alter, when new patterns of operation emerge, when we start seeing new linkages, relationships, and connections forming. And that's what we want to see here. in our community cohesion. So through that, we've created an evaluation design that is very focused on engaging with our community and creating that capacity. So in this evaluation design, we can see 3 core concepts that go into it. So there is our evaluation capacity building, data collection, which is aligned to outcomes. Again, we don't want to collect data just to collect data, right? We want to collect that data for a purpose, and that purpose needs to align with the outcomes that we want to see. And on top of that, our third concept is building a centralized data system where our best art team can actually just enter it, see what our progress is, and be able to kind of share that information or being able to access this information easily, right? We want to minimize our barriers when it comes to our own team capacity and our community's capacity as well. So through this design, you guys are going to see kind of some little pieces that go into it. So within the capacity building concept, we are capacity building our best art team to be able to engage and be providing this not informative approach, but a transformative approach, right? So that involves our regional partnership, and that involves our community members and stakeholders, with also increasing their capacity, right? I'm hearing a lot of amazing input from you guys just in this meeting, from previous ones, and then in that we want to be able to kind of capture that in a way that we're providing that agency, we're providing that uplift for you to kind of show off that empowerment that you've reached yourself, right? Our community members are very powerful. There's community groups that provide direct services. There's community groups that provide public spaces and art and cultural heritage. And then there's groups that provide advocacy, right? And we want to be able to kind of capture all the experiences from our community collaborators into a way that we have all the capacity to share the information that we want to share, or to be able to create our shared banners. What is it that we are all prioritizing, and how can we make what we are really good at combine to create that systems change? So part of that capacity building is just allowing the ability to grow, not only within ourselves, but as a group as a whole. Our data collection alignment is connected to what our community members have valued. So hearing what in developing kind of our community change agenda, the data collection that we gather is going to be aligned towards those goals. We want to see improved. We want to disrupt the system that is enabling barriers and challenges and creating harmful environments for our prenatal to 5 group. So with that, all our data collection will go towards creating an analysis that allows us to create a clear vision to our outcomes that we desire. And then on top of that, we have just our centralized data system that goes into our automated dashboards that are accessible and user-friendly. So again, that's just something that we have on our technical side that provides access to information in an easy way and an easy way to navigate through, which ultimately collects to understanding impact and areas for growth, which ultimately is leading towards what we see as systems change and system disruption. So this next slide kind of shows you a little bit of what these kind of buzzwords are, right? So what is empowerment evaluation, and what is community-based participatory action research, right? Or CDPAR. And so these research approaches were kind of chosen by Children's Bureau kind of in a way that allows what information we've heard and what feedback we've heard to kind of guide and design what are the key actors in our data, in our learning, in our evaluation. So these are the approaches that we feel are best suited in our work in the future. So empowerment evaluation, as we can see, is an approach that aims to, 1, provide program stakeholders with the tools for assessing the planning, implementation, and self-evaluation of their program, and 2, mainstreaming evaluation as part of the planning and management of the program/organization. And community-based participatory action research is, in quotes, a collaborative approach to research that involves all stakeholders throughout the research process, from establishing the research question to developing data collection tools to analysis and dissemination of findings. And that goes from the Healthy City and Advancement Project from 2011. So moving on from here. Click that. I don't know why it's not moving, but there you go. So here are some kind of a breakdown of what that looks like. So now that we've kind of seen the definition of empowerment evaluation and community-based participatory action research, here's just kind of like a simplified guidance of what that looks like. So our principles within empowerment evaluation we see are through improvement, community ownership, inclusion, democratic participation, social justice, community knowledge, evidence-based strategies, capacity building, organizational learning, and accountability, right? And in that, that's not even the limit of it. So if you want to, feel free to put in the chat, or you can also put anything down that you feel also might apply to that, that isn't listed on here. And going on to community-based participatory action research. The core characteristics that we find in that is in recognizing the community as a core unit of identity, right? So what that really means is that we're seeing that in our systems change framework, we're not depending on just ourselves, right? It's not going to be Best Start Region 5 that is going to see shifts in every sort of aspect of the AV sees, because there's housing, there's economic development, there is child safety and development, there's education, there is infrastructure, there's transportation, there's a lot of different things that we want to improve in the Antelope Valley, and then one community group just cannot handle that all by themselves. We need that community approach, and the best way to do that is to actually empower the community to be able to be participating in what we want to see in the prioritization of our outcomes, right? Which again adds to the cohesion, that social cohesion, in which we're creating change through, again, disrupting that system, right? We're allowing our community groups to be able to be better suited for reaching elected officials, or being able to better communicate what it is that is the basis of their concern, or be able to actually collect information. And in the Antelope Valley, we see we're in what's called kind of like a data desert, right? There's not very much information that applies to us specifically, but we kind of have to disaggregate information based on what LA County reports as a whole, right? So a lot of specialized information regarding the AV is kind of hard to come by. So what can we do about that? And that comes into play in which, if we can promote data collection and we can promote what sort of information we need here, the community groups as a whole, the community members and stakeholders can come together and actually find out what it is and be able to have the capacity to be engaged, right? Through this core ability to kind of collect that information and being able to analyze it. So this builds upon that. So building upon the assets, the strengths and resources kind of goes into this. So on top of that, we have our joint learning, our research benefits community, which we have the community defining the problem, the cyclical and iterative process, and all partners are involved in the research. So all partners play a role in analyzing, interpreting, and disseminating our findings here. So there's a lot of stuff behind there, and I know that it can be kind of dizzying vocabulary of terms here and concepts, right? Because when we look at systems change, we're looking at stocks, flows, buffers, leverage points, root causes as well, feedback loops. But that's kind of the point of all this, that we all get together and we all understand these approaches and we all understand the framework so that we can all work in unison, right? Because the challenge is communication. I think that, we all get together and we all do our services, but in really being able to connect, being able to communicate what it is and unify behind something is really where we want to tackle that challenge. So what does that look like, right? Here are our ideas for implementing empowerment and evaluation in CBPAR. This is kind of like a simple infographic that shows kind of what possible activities we have there. So our community members can engage in data collection. We can have community members analyze and interpret that data as well. And on the flip side, we can also have our community members design data collection instruments, right? So how do we want to capture this? Do we want to capture this through surveys? How can we share the findings of those surveys? Can we interview anybody that we work with? Can we interview our community members, or any sort of recipients of direct services, perhaps? And that, of course, comes from the strengths and places that different community groups are reaching, right? What different demographics we can all connect with. So, and that also leads to our community members and key stakeholders defining the research questions, defining the research evaluation as well. So that's kind of our empowerment and evaluation framework in a nutshell.
Yeah, and thank you, David. And kind of like what David said, going over the evaluation work, these are the 4 goals that Best Start partnership of what we like to focus on. And the first one being capacity building and sustainability, sorry. And with that being said, is giving the partnership the proper tools to sustain this initiative. And then the second goal being bringing the Best Start team, the community members and partners, again, to eventually take over the data and the evaluation process. And then third, being able to track the progress to inform ongoing reflections and implementation. And then lastly, we would like to create an accessible and centralized data tracking system so everyone could have access to it, community members, partners, the Best Start team, to really see, again, accountability, to see what we're doing and how forward, what the progress we have going on.
Great. Thank you so much, David and Stephanie. And what we want to cover now is the evaluation questions. The evaluation framework is nested in the following evaluation questions that you'll see here. And the way we've divided these questions is looking at community residents, stakeholders, and partners, looking at the regional partnership, and also systems level evaluation questions. So the overarching question around impact for community residents is, how is Best Start impacting participating community residents? To what extent has participating in Best Start increased community residents' awareness, skills, knowledge on data, leadership, advocacy, policy, and systems change? To what extent are community residents engaging in systems change efforts? And what connections and relationships are community residents building with local stakeholders and other organizations in the region? And for stakeholders and partners, these are also similar questions around, how is Best Start impacting participating stakeholders and partners? To what extent has participating in Best Start increased stakeholders' awareness, skills, knowledge on data, community priorities, and other key partners in the region? Which stakeholders and key partners participate in the regional partnership? What are their levels of connections, interactions, and collaborations? And to what extent are organizations advocating for legislation and issues impacting AV communities at the local, state, and federal level? Next slide, please. And the questions that relate to the regional partnership are the following. What is the reach of the regional partnership? How many community residents, stakeholders, and partners are involved in Best Start? What are their geographic and demographic characteristics of Best Start members? How aligned is the regional partnership to Best Start values and framework? How is Best Start building the capacity of community residents to ensure sustainability? And we're also exploring systems level questions. And of course, systems change takes a very long time. And so we know that we may not be able to answer these questions during the first year of the evaluation, but we definitely are already thinking about systems level evaluation questions to see what is the impact of Best Start broadly around systems. So the 2 questions that we would like to explore this year are, to what extent has Best Start served as a convener and facilitator of systems change in the Antelope Valley? Do local indicators show improvement in areas connected to Best Start systems change efforts? And again, those are the questions that are grounding and nesting the evaluation efforts for this year. And I'll go ahead and pass the mic to David.
Thank you, Alejandra. I wanted to kind of also pause here, so feel free to come off mute, go in the chat to see if you have any sort of comments and input before we kind of close off our presentation. So feel free to chime in, come off mute, interrupt me if you'd like, or type in the chat. But right, so on the heels of that information, here is our evaluation plan snapshot. So here you can see kind of our short term and our intermediate terms. Again, it's really, really hard to kind of see where a long-term goal might stand. So this is kind of grounding ourselves in our goals. So in our outcome goals. So in the short term, we can see that we want our community members to have increased awareness of Best Start, right? Our community organizations and resources. There's, again, a kind of, we've heard information, and in our data, we've captured that a lot of the feedback of what kind of is creating barriers in our community is just a lack of information. We're not able to kind of share information to the places that need it, or in a way that individuals are able to access it. You know, what the community, we've also want to have the goal of having community members have increased awareness and knowledge of systems change. So as mentioned today, systems change is the main priority with Best Start. So we want to be able to pride ourselves with facilitating this. How can we empower you to kind of create your own data committees? How can we empower you to connect with your local officials? How can we empower you to create those public spaces, those safe spaces, the ones that appreciate, you know, diversity, that celebrate inclusivity, right? How can we overcome language barriers? And then on top of that, we reach our intermediate goals, in which we have a greater number of community members that have knowledge of Best Start, right? So we want to not just establish it, but we want to maintain it. And then on top of that, we go into further goals and our outcomes, in which we want a higher number of stakeholders to have increased awareness of community priorities. How can we have the community reach, you know, different levels of where we're at? How can we have our community reach our community leaders, our schools, you know, again, our officials as well? How can we create that, again, that cohesion? So that goes into our intermediate goal. Our stakeholders have a higher number of connections and stronger relationships with community residents and organizations in the region, right? And another intermediate goal in this, in our outcomes, is creating a number of organizations that advocate for legislation and issues impacting communities at the local, state, and federal level. One thing of systems change, if I may add to that, to our intermediate goal there, is that if you move one piece, that's not systems change, right? Systems change requires, you know, kind of a coordinated effort in disrupting the flow of systems, in which if we're just moving one piece, then it doesn't really fall into that category. We want to see systems change as a whole. And one of the best ways for us to kind of see that is through policy. So advocating for legislation and issues impacting our communities is going to be incredibly important as we move forward with our outcomes and engage with our stakeholders as well. So on top of that, in our RNG and LNC partnerships, you know, our regional network grantees and local network contractors, to increase recruitment and participation of diverse populations in regional partnership meetings, including fathers, LGBTQ, older adults and youth, so that we're not just only reaching one, very specific demographics. Are we only reaching people from this community or that community? We want to see individuals from all communities, because we know that they're in here. We know that there are neighbors. There are, we encounter them in our public spaces. We encounter them online. We encounter them at events. We encounter them in our public forums. We encounter whoever them is in a way that is inclusive, and we appreciate, our identities and our heritage and our backgrounds, as opposed to seeing that as a barrier. We want to be able to kind of have that inclusive space, which we are also kind of being able to be a little bit more informative of those practices and kind of that awareness within ourselves, and overcoming unconscious biases in our DEI class, our diversity and equity and inclusion class, just as a shout out. And on top of that, our intermediate goal with our RNGs and LNCs is also to recruit higher numbers of community members and stakeholders and organizations to sustain participation. So we want to be able to hold on to this. We want to be able to hold on to our growth as a network, as our Best Start Region 5 network, so that once we start this work, we don't falter by missing out on anybody, right? We don't want to miss out on any sort of growth that we see in our systems, in our systems change efforts. Because again, without numbers, without collectivism here, we're not able to kind of reach that. So we want to be able to kind of sustain our participation and be able to kind of be engaging and still maintain the target prioritizations that can get everybody on board. And then our ultimate intermediate goal with RNGs and LNCs is to build the capacity of community members. So as touched upon before, our capacity building is going to be key here, because not only does our Best Start team want a capacity to build to be able to kind of teach and kind of share this information on how to, collect and analyze data, on how to, organize within the community. Those are skills that we want to pass on to, our collective as a whole. But yeah, so then that goes into, we provided our data sources here, and we also provided our timeline. So we want, with our red outcomes, we kind of are developing that for fall of this year, with our yellow outcomes that we see there, with our stakeholders, is by, we want to implement that by winter of 2024 to spring of 2024, or spring to winter 2024. And then with our green outcomes, with our RNG and LNC outcomes, we want to see that by fall 2023. And we can see our data sources there too. So in our red outcomes, that's for our community members. And we want to do this by surveying. We want to create our empowerment dashboard. And then we also want to look at our case stories. What is the stories in the AV that we want to see? What is the experience of a child, or what is the experience of a parent? What is the experience of an educator? And we want to look at that through further through community member focus groups. With our stakeholders, we want to look at surveying, creating a social network map, creating access for our empowerment dashboards, and also interviewing our stakeholders as well. We want to see what you think so far of the partnership, and what you think so far in terms of what our priorities might look like in the future, and how we can collaborate further on connecting our stakeholders with community members and creating, again, that cohesion with everybody. And then with the green, our green is our RNG and LNC group, which is, again, opening up the empowerment dashboard and then having our community members provide case stories and focus groups. So that is a lot of information, I am aware. So again, kind of maybe take another deep breath. I want to check in our chat what we look at. So Doretta, thank you for your comment. I'll read that out for the group. She says it's important to keep in mind when addressing systems that not all workers are supportive of system processes. However, they're highly impacted when systems make impulsive changes based on community concerns. Therefore, our actions could negatively impact good workers in the process. We must be conscientious of issues of working class members of community are dealing with as well. Oftentimes in school systems, heads of teachers associations should be engaged and or removed to provide equitable access and support for all educators and not just a few. Thank you. And thank you, Doretta. I know that's a very good point, that we don't want to prescribe a cure that's worse than a disease, right? So that's again something that you, as somebody who has this information and has that perspective and that knowledge, can show off to the group and show off to the collective and say, hey, this is what my perspective is, and how we can maybe be careful moving on in the future to be considerative of the whole as opposed to what our individual outcomes are, right? So separating our individual outcomes as opposed to our system of outcomes. So thank you for that, Doretta. And then Green Thumb AV. So Mrs. Crayon, I believe. In implementing our surveys, it says that in implementing our surveys, culture plays a big part, and certainly, and that's another reason why we want all facets of the community to be engaged here, to kind of let us know how we can develop that, right? So how do in implementing our surveys, understanding cultural heritage and understanding how we can meet people where they're at, really, in the comfort of their spaces, in the comfort of language, in the comfort of being talked to by you know, in a relatable way, is all kind of important in us conducting our survey and our research, because in our research we want to always leave a positive impact and never leave anybody feeling hurt or feeling you know, insecure or anxious about the process. So moving on to that, with our next steps. And our next steps are in designing data collection instruments and finalizing our empowerment dashboards. So we are currently in the process of organizing our tools, organizing our literature, organizing our frameworks that we want to kind of base that off of, our surveys, so our data collection methods, to be able to kind of create that capacity building within ourselves to then share onto you all in our community. Oh, and then Joseph Huddleston asked, what do stakeholder backend data collection tools look like? SQL, Google, Excel, Access, etc. And yeah, that does. So Joseph, we actually, there's a variety of ways that we kind of hold that information. So there's the one that we want to share with the community will be through Google, because the ultimate goal for us is to create something that's accessible to everybody. When we're talking about things like you know, SQL, or when we're looking at kind of more stylized processes like a display or visualization tools like Power BI, that's something in which, you know, we need to put a lot more time into. But when you access things like a Google site, that those tools that we're going to share are going to be accessible through our Google Work suite, which is, you know, very you know, everybody has access to it. It's on the web. You know, and anything that we have on Excel, we can translate to Google. And on top of that, yes, Access as well, Sylvia. So hopefully that answers your question, Joseph. All right, and I'll open up the floor for any more questions that you guys might have. Right, Joseph, and that's the point, is that also free, because we don't want to attach, we're not attaching any sort of cost to anything like that, because again, if you have any sort of more high-end or powerful you know, data visualization tools or collection tools, you know, a lot of times they're paywalled, or you know, they have some sort of subscription trial behind them. So yes, Google is kind of where we want things to be, because it's very accessible to everybody. So with that in mind, I wanted to open up for any further questions. And if not, I wanted to thank you for your time, everybody, and letting me share. On top of that, I think so that Stephanie Durrell are going to share a survey, by the way. So as we're mentioning, surveys have been a really important part in us refining our process and being able to kind of get to the point that we're at, but that's still going to be important data for us to continue to collect. So if we can, you know, have you guys, when we get to that part, when we share our survey, to please take a look at it and engage on that end, so that maybe we can continue to collect that information and we can go back in our process for our next convening, and we can share the results of these surveys. So thank you for putting that in the chat, Stephanie. That's it's going to be really important for that. And so, will our surveys include children with incarcerated parents? So that could be a potential thing. So that that ultimately, Mrs. Cran, I believe. Oh, Alejandra actually can raise her hand on this one. Alejandra, if you wanted to chime in.
Yes, that's a really great question. And, you know, I think it'll depend on what the priorities of the regional partnership end up being, you know, and what the focus is as a regional partnership. So, you know, if, you know, the focus is around children and, you know, the topic that you said, incarcerated parents, and maybe an evaluation committee could, you know, do a data collection around that. But right now, as far as the overarching evaluation, we're probably going to be interviewing and conducting surveys of community partnership members, so members who attend Best Start, to assess the impact of Best Start in, you know, your systems level thinking, in your general experience as a community resident in the AV region.
Thank you, Alejandra. I hope that answers the question. I'll also give a little bit of space in case anybody else wants to reach out, write anything, or come off mute.
You know, this is Doretta. I'll come off mute. I was thinking in terms of how to get more parents involved or whatnot. Some old-fashioned canvassing. You know, I know during election season, you get a lot of candidates going out to the soccer fields and the football games, and they have an opportunity to speak to the parents. I think that's something that we might want to consider
Mhm.
incorporating, having some literature, documentation about Best Start and what is being offered, the opportunities, and just take a walk through the parks and take a walk through the soccer field and hand out documents to parents.
Mhm.
Smile at them and hey, we'd love to see you here. You know, we're trying to do this as a community, you know. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Getting out on the ground, walking through some communities. You give me some documents, I'll walk my whole community. It'll take me a couple of days because of my back, but I will walk the community and make sure that my neighbors are aware of what it is that you all are offering.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is a really great idea, Doretta, because I think that also kind of goes into um the reaching people where they're at too. So old-fashioned canvassing, I think, is going towards those public spaces, but it also opens up to reach people where they're at. Maybe somebody can't go outside, or maybe somebody's in a place in which they have very limited access to going out to any sort of public forum or community space or commons. So being able to do that and not just solely relying on kind of digital media is something that is a great thing to bring up when we actually create these community evaluation committees, right? As it stands right now, we want to be able to kind of gauge our community capacity in general, right? How is Best Start allowing you to open up that capacity? And so we want to be able to kind of use those guiding questions for you, Doretta, so that when we come to that point in which we're able to kind of see what's the best thing that works for, well, Best Start, to be able to capture these community opinions, to be able to put that in place and kind of facilitate that so that you can share these ideas with other community members. And then after, and in talking about that and then setting up those priorities and strategies, we can start taking action, right? Because this all doesn't happen in theory and this all doesn't stay in the meeting. We actually want to see action. So that's kind of where our timeline is heading us towards, so that we can share these opinions and actually act on them, as opposed to kind of only seeing if it's a good idea in theory or seeing if what the logistics might be. We want to actually get to that point because, again, systems disruption and systems change is something that we also really want to be able to record and capture. You know, if it's working for us, how can we share it with other communities outside of Region 5, right? How do we share it with other places in California or even throughout the nation? So it's kind of we have this kind of a big idea to be able to kind of see though there's no way to see the light at the end of the tunnel because there's so many bends and turns, but that shouldn't really kind of dissuade us, right? That's why we want to start doing this in a way in which we're capturing everybody's opinion and everybody's ideas in the formation of this. And also, Denise says that it's so true. We need to go where the families are, and yes, absolutely agreed. So, any more questions? Okay, so thank you guys for sharing. I really, really appreciate the dialogue, and appreciate you guys kind of being engaged as well. So, I'll move on to stop my screen and pass the microphone to Doretta, or Darrell. Sorry.
No worries, that happens all the time. So thank you all for joining us. But before we leave, I want to just share my screen because we want to get some closing reflections. What were your thoughts after coming through this stakeholders convening? What are some things that stood out to you that were prevalent, something that you will take back? So I'm going to open it up. If you want to drop something in the chat, if you would like to come off mic and just share what were your takeaways from today's presentations? What would you like to see happen from this point on? You can go ahead and share now. You can drop it in the chat or feel free to come off the mic and just share. My bad.
Hi, this is Miss Crayon from Green Thumb. I
Hi,
would
Ms.
like,
Crayon.
hi. I would like to see the Antelope Valley create a wraparound support system with the community organizations that are really on the ground doing the work, interacting with our community and able to do what we would consider observational assessment without any how would I say, without any barriers of embarrassment to a person that is in need. Just hypothetically saying, I had an individual come to my office, and it was a lady, no children, no disabilities, but she did not have the income because she had an eviction, but she made 4,800 a month. She was homeless. She said she went to the shelter and the intaker looked at her and said, "You don't look homeless."
Mm,
Wow.
okay.
So I'm really big on what I would call community culture. And when we implement whatever we're going to implement, we implement it holistically. Don't just, they may come to us as professionals. We take all these trainings on how to assess and how to address the need, but we also need to look a little bit further, I feel, and do more of what we call an observational assessment of what they don't know they need and implement that in the care plan without insulting them.
Okay. Well, those are
Okay.
things that we definitely will take a look at, especially as our partnership begins to develop and grow in those areas. So I really do invite you back into coming to our meetings as we go through this process. I see your hand, Miss Denise, and then Jean. We have a few minutes left before we're out of here, y'all. So just brief comments, but just a quick 1-word or 2-word reflections of what you all took away from this presentation today. Just quickly. Go ahead, Miss Denise.
Well, I think my takeaway from the presentation today was that we do have a lot of work to do. We have areas in the Antelope Valley where we really need to hit the pavement. And what I'd like to see happen from this point is for all of us to work together and to get more community members involved, not just those of us with agencies or those of us that have businesses or want to help the people, but we really need to get the people that need the help involved. And that means going to them and, like somebody said, breaking down the barriers and letting them know we're here and we care. And I think that's important, having been on both sides of the fence.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Miss Jean Harris, I see your hand. Quickly give me a word. What would you like to see happen from this point on after seeing this presentation today?
Networking expansion.
Networking expand. Oh, I like that word.
We're still missing a few key players in the group that is here, that is consistently participating. I shared the State of the Child report with the director of the Department of Mental Health for Service Area 1. I also shared it with the director of the Children's Clinic for the Department of Mental Health. And as an advocate working with LA County leadership in downtown to get funding directed to Service Area 1, I think we need to expand that network and connection. I'd like to see a presentation of the State of the Child report at the Health Neighborhood meeting.
Okay. Got you. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Listen, we're going to wrap it up. We're at our time frame right now. I'm encouraging you to please follow us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, our YouTube, and then scan our LinkedIn. You can get all of this information. It will be uploaded, and the presentations will be presented to you because we want you involved actively. We are looking forward to hearing from you at our next regional meeting. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to give you back the day. It's 12 o'clock. We have reached our time limit. It was so much, and it was a lot of good information. Listen, you all, you have a wonderful day and take care of yourself. And we will see you at our next regional meeting, which is October. Oh my goodness. Yes, October 5th. So please come back with all of this information and all of your input and takeaways. We want to incorporate it. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye
Thank you, everybody.
Have fun, Sylvia. I'm jealous.
Have a great day, everyone.
Enjoy yourself.
Yes. Oh, Doretta is calling me. Hey, Mr. Retta. Did you get there?